Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the podcast that I, your host, David Woodruff, lovingly refer to as the Woodruff Report. As I'm currently speaking to you right now, it is about midday on a wonderful Saturday in San Francisco. I know that this is not the regular time. Usually I come at you Friday afternoons, but we had a very extra special event going on, and it pried me away from this podcasting occupation that I so enjoy. Nothing's changing. The time slot is not any different. I just had a little conflict, so that's why I'm coming at you on a Saturday instead of a Friday. General housekeeping as usual. The iTunes account is confirmed up. I got a confirmation email from Apple, probably sent from the CEO himself. So I know that the podcast is up and running, and I know that if you say that it's not, you're lying. No, I'm just kidding. If you are having any trouble accessing it, or if something needs to be changed, send me an email, tell me what's up. I'll try to get it figured out. This is the first time I'm doing it. I'm not experienced in it, so feedback is necessary, feedback is wanted, and anything that you guys can tell me to improve the account in any way will be taken as constructive criticism, and I will try to employ it ASAP. But enough of the boring stuff. Let's get to the beautiful, big, wide world of sports. We have the NFL Combine beginning, which signals that the NFL Draft is going to be soon. Of course, the NFL are masters of making the NFL year-round coverage. It seems like the Super Bowl has just ended, but yet this marquee event, somehow the Combine has become a marquee event, is already upon us, and we've got the NFL Draft coming at you. Of course, we will do a show when that happens, analyzing the Niners pick. They actually did the coin toss, because if you'll remember, the 49ers and the Raiders had tied for the same record, and they I'm not quite sure all the details, but no team had an advantage when it came to common opponents or anything, which in NFL rulebooks means that the choice for who selects first in the draft goes down to a coin toss, and it was between who would get the number 9 and number 10 overall pick. The Niners won that coin toss. A little bit of good luck going into the new season, hopefully, for us Niners fans. So they will be getting the 9th pick. The Raiders will be getting the 10th pick. Now, I don't know if that'll change anything. It is pretty interesting because both teams are very thin at the linebacking position, especially the Raiders. They probably had the worst linebackers in the NFL last season. I mean, they signed Navarro Bowman, and he became their number 1 marquee linebacker, so that certainly says something about the state of the unit. And the 49ers, Reuben Foster was good, and alongside him was Brock Coyle. Obviously not a very formidable pairing in the middle, so both teams are probably going to be looking at linebackers, maybe not first round, but later in the draft. So this coin toss might actually prove to be important. The 49ers and Raiders may have a common player that they want to draft, especially in rounds 3, 4, and onward, when we're not looking at the big names. We're sort of getting into the smaller, fixed areas of the team, pick guys with high upside, stuff like that. So enough about the Combine. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it later. I should say enough about the draft. I'll talk a little bit more about the Combine later. I also want to talk about, on this episode, the San Francisco Giants. The new Major League Baseball season is upon us. The Houston Astros will attempt to defend their World Series championships, while all other teams will be eyeing the silverware. The Giants have been active in free agency, picking up some major players. Look no further than Evan Longoria and Andrew McCutchen. And although they didn't help the average age of the unit, it signaled a win-now approach from the brass of the San Francisco Giants. And I will be analyzing on this edition of the Woodruff Report if I think that those pickups will be the difference between a major letdown like the Giants had last season and a world championship like they did in 2010, 2012, and 2014. So a loaded edition coming at you. I hope you enjoy it. And let's get into it. Woodruff Report, David Woodruff, 3, 2, 1. As I just stated, the Giants have been rather active in free agency, and they have been active these last few years, more active than they had been in their history. Their payroll has been going up, and for fans like me, it's an exciting time because it signals that it's sort of a championship or bust mode. And if you want to talk about bust, last season for the San Francisco Giants was bust central. No one performed well, injuries at key positions, and the players that they did bring in just did not contribute in the way they needed to. Denard Span was a complete failure in center field. He was too old to play tremendous defense, and he couldn't hit. He was supposed to be that top-of-the-lineup guy, but he couldn't get on base. It was atrocious. The Denard Span experiment didn't work, and many other of the free agent signings underperformed and led to the overall underperforming of the team as a whole. So, hopefully the new crop of free agents that the San Francisco Giants are bringing in are not going to underperform like last year's crop. So let's talk about who they bring in. So, the headliners are Evan Longoria, who was acquired in a trade with the Tampa Bay Rays, and Andrew McCutchen, the outfielder for the Pittsburgh Pirates, who was also acquired in a trade. Two other deals that were struck, Tony Watson, the longtime Pirates relief pitcher, was brought in. He's a lefty. He'll help shore up the bullpen. And Austin Jackson, you may remember him from his Detroit Tigers days. He was on the Detroit Tigers team that got swept by the San Francisco Giants in the World Series. He played on the Indians in more of a utility role last season. He was also brought in to sort of reaffirm the outfield and make it stronger than it was. So, with these outfield, I'll talk about the outfield first because that looks like it's going to be the greatest. It's going to see the greatest change in this upcoming season. So last year you had Denard Span in center field, you had Hunter Pence in right, and you sort of had a revolving door in left field. We sometimes saw Jarrett Parker, we saw a little bit of Mac Williamson. None of them performed well enough to really hold down that role. And left field's been an issue for the Giants these last few years. They haven't had a consistent left fielder for a while. So the Giants tried to address this issue by bringing in McCutchen. And you may think, well, that's weird. McCutchen is a center fielder. And yes, he is sort of a center fielder, but it looks like all signs point to him moving to right field for this upcoming season and Hunter Pence moving to left field. And we don't know if Hunter Pence is going to play in more of a utility role this season, maybe a platoon system, but maybe that's what needs to happen. And then Austin Jackson, the very good defender, will slide into that center field role. And again, Austin Jackson played extremely well last season for the Cleveland Indians in a platoon role. He would bat mostly against left-handed pitchers, and it'll be interesting to see if San Francisco uses him in the same way and maybe brings up a young gun from the farm system to sort of platoon with him. And with the average age on this roster, I would really like to see these platooning with younger players, these good veterans who maybe aren't as good as they were in their prime, platooning with these young players, because I really need to see the average age of this Giants roster fall. I mean, we have a lot of old players on the team, and yes, that signals win now, but it also means that an injury here, an injury there, and we don't really have replacements, and I think that was a major problem with what happened last season. We got injuries. We sort of had a loaded front lineup, or what looked on paper as a loaded front lineup, but insert an injury here, an injury there, and suddenly you're looking at a team that could not get any run support, played very below average defense, and didn't have the pitching to keep them in many games, and that's what led to the record last season. So let's talk about these new outfielders that they brought in. Austin Jackson, I already touched on it. He played extremely well for Cleveland last season in this platoon role. He'll probably platoon in center field. He brings plus defense to the outfield. He's fast, he's rangy, he gets good reads on the ball, and it's going to be nice to have him in the cavernous center fielder in the cavernous center field that is AT&T Park. I mean, if you're standing facing the plate from center field, you've got to account for Triples Alley to your left, which is a unique aspect of AT&T, 420 out to right center field. And then you've got the deepest part of the left field yard in left center. So you've got the two deepest parts of the yard to cover as a center fielder, plus you just have to carry your position in the outfield. And at AT&T, the ball doesn't exactly fly. So you're going to have to cover a lot of ground in center field, and Denard Span was not able to do that consistently last year. So I'm sure the Giants higher-ups are hoping that Austin Jackson can come in and be that defender that sort of plugs up the center field. And once you've got a leader of the outfield, you've got that center fielder. If you've got a plus center fielder, you don't really need to have terrific corner outfielders. I mean, you don't want them to be atrocious at defense, but you can focus on people who maybe can slash or hit better. I mean, look at Aaron Judge. He played decent enough defense in right field for the Yankees last season, but let's not kid ourselves. The reason that he was in the lineup every day was not for his defense. It was for his superhuman home run hitting ability. So maybe the Giants can stick a power hitting prospect that maybe reveals himself during the season, but that's all if Austin Jackson can play the defense that people want him to in center field. Now maybe the most exciting pickup of the offseason, Andrew McCutchen, the Pirates star player who had one of his worst seasons last year, but is still a terrific player who can turn it on. He brings excitement. He brings good hitting and decent defense to the table. Playing right field at AT&T Park is not an enviable task. You've got, again, Triples Alley to account for, and you've got that weird sort of brick archway layout, plus the wind just goes psycho in right field because you've got McCovey Cove out there, and the wind just it's very tough. It's a tough position to play, and it always takes right fielders a little while to get acclimated to their new environment. But in my opinion, Andrew McCutchen comes in more for his offense than he does for his defense. He's an exciting player. He was your 2013 National League MVP, so he's proven that he can be if not the best player in Major League. And yeah, he's getting up there in the age department, but he can still do it. And the Giants will need him to shore up the middle of that lineup because Hunter Pence, he cannot hit like he once could. And Posey, Buster is still the same old Buster, still a star player, but he needs someone to protect him at the top of that lineup. And last year, Posey did not have enough protection. He had a tremendous season, but he didn't have enough help around him to make that Giants lineup formidable enough. Pitchers could just say, okay, I'm just going to pitch around Posey because no one else in this lineup scares me. Now you've got McCutchen who can scare an opposing pitcher, and again, it sort of happens reciprocally too. McCutchen now has Posey, so they'll both get some more pitches, they'll both get some more fastballs, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with them. Can they hit them out of the yard? Again, the modern Major League Baseball game relies on home runs. Home runs are being hit at a historically high rate, and the Giants were sort of left behind. Don't quote me on this, but I believe the Giants had the least amount of home runs in the big leagues last year. So you do not want to be behind when the game moves in a new direction, and McCutchen and Posey can help each other to get the Giants back on track. Moving into the infield, third base was another major problem last year for the Giants. You had Christian Arroyo there. You had just craziness. And Pablo Sandoval ended the season as the third baseman for the Giants. I mean, just utter chaos. He wasn't even with the organization at the beginning of the season. And injuries, problems. I mean, you had Connor Gillespie. It was just a revolving door at third base. Evan Longoria, the longtime Ray, is brought in. He will immediately shore up that position. I've always been a huge fan of Evan Longoria. He sort of toiled away in anonymity. I don't know if that's a word. Anonymity in Tampa Bay because, let's be honest, most casual baseball fans don't know the best player on the mediocre fourth place team in the AL East, which is often what the Tampa Bay Rays were. But in that magical 2009 run that the Tampa Bay Rays had to the World Series, remember they had a young David Price, they had Evan Longoria in his prime, he proved that he could get the job done on the biggest stage. And if everything goes according to plan this season and the Giants make the playoffs, they're going to need someone who can get it done when the lights are brightest. He plays good defense at the third base position, and he can hit. Again, this guy's been brought in to hit, to get on base, to score runs, which was something that the Giants simply could not do last season. He's exciting. And if you look at the trade, the Giants did have to give up a significant amount of prospect power in exchange for an older, aged Evan Longoria, not at the peak of his powers. But again, win now approach. Evan Longoria can help the lineup today. I keep wanting to say the 49ers for some reason. I'm talking about baseball. The Giants want to win now. They are willing to give up a little bit of their future for a potential star in Evan Longoria. Finally, the free agent pickup that helps the pitching staff is Tony Watson, the left-hander who played for the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Dodgers a little bit last season. He's a lefty. He occupied the closing role for a little while for the Pirates and was sort of an eighth-inning guy, seventh-inning guy for the Dodgers. Of course, they had that loaded bullpen last year when they played the Astros in the World Series. Tony Watson is someone who the Giants needed because their bullpen has just been atrocious these last few years. And I don't know if he's going to get the closer role or if he's going to sort of be that set-up eighth-inning guy, but the bullpen needed reinforcements. And I still think even with this Tony Watson addition, more needs to be done, but this is a step in the right direction. Again, last year we had Hunter Strickland. He was sort of getting pounded. He needs to work on his location, refine his command, work on a few secondary pitches besides that powerful fastball. And the closer role was atrocious last year. Sam Dyson eventually got it, but it was similar to the third base and left field, a revolving door. No one could really get it done consistently. And that may press Tony Watson to go into closer duty, but we'll see. So Tony Watson acquired, Andrew McCutchen acquired, Evan Longoria acquired, Austin Jackson acquired. 4 big names, 4 people who can contribute now to a team that desperately needs some firepower and some reinforcements. So high expectations for the Giants. We'll see how they do going into spring training, and hopefully no catastrophic injuries occur. We never wish that, but especially this year on a team and a roster that again looks a little fragile. Can't afford depth to become an issue this season. Big expectations, giant expectations, you could say. Going into this season, and again, I'll keep you updated on Woodruff Report about what goes on with the Giants. But as a fan, I'm excited, and I'm glad I can say that after free agency, because last year there was not a lot to be excited about. So before I sign off, I want to talk briefly about the Combine, the NFL Combine, that is. And I feel like I do this every year. Or I know I did it last year on this podcast, but I've done it my whole life. The Combine is stupid. It's really stupid, and it needs to be edited to be more applicable to what the NFL actually is. I mean, again, I tell my friends this. I will not take the NFL Combine seriously until the offensive linemen stop running the 40-yard dash. That's just my baseline to be able to tune into it again. And it seems like I can't escape it. I mean, it's all over Instagram, all over Twitter. Blah, blah, blah runs a 4.38 40. Great, he's fast, but can he cover someone? Can he change direction quick? Can he run good routes? Football is not all about pure athleticism. I mean, that's why it's a team sport. That's why you call plays, because it's not just one guy being faster than the other team. It's everyone working together and meshing correctly and getting the timing right and blocking and tackling. It's so much more. And the combine, it distracts you from what football is to this sort of fairy tale world of being fast, and you've got these superhuman athletes and who can be the most superhuman out of all of them. And I got especially frustrated watching the Saquon Barkley, everyone salivating about his combine performance. He ran like a 4.3 40, bench press 29 reps, had a 40-inch vertical. Okay, he's athletic. He's a good player. But like, who cares about his 40-inch vertical? You're never standing jumping in football. You rarely leap as a running back. You sometimes jump over someone, or you jump to catch a pass. And of course, everyone will say, well, it displays his explosiveness. There are other ways you can measure explosiveness that are more related to football. Have him take a handoff and accelerate or something. Because, again, running a 40-yard dash without a football, without pads, is not applicable to game time situation. It frustrates me. And the one thing that I do appreciate about the Combine is that it gets people's names who go to maybe smaller schools. Like, there's this lineman, I can't remember his name. He goes to UTEP, UTEP, and I'd never heard of him, but based on his Combine performance and based on what the draft experts have seen, he's like the third-ranked interior lineman, which is cool. It's cool that the only players getting drafted, that it's not like only Alabama and SEC and Power 5 players are getting drafted. You've got these sort of under-the-radar guys who can make a difference. And the Combine does help with that, I have to admit. But again, we had linemen running the 40. We had linemen broad jumping and doing vertical leap. I mean, how stupid. Why is a lineman testing his vertical jump? If a lineman ever vertical jumps in a game, please send me a video of that, and I will take a video of myself eating my hat. Because it's just not something that happens in a game. Anyway, brief sound off on the Combine. If you want a longer, more extended tirade, look back in my episode list. It's called The Underwear Olympics. I think it's roughly episode 14 or so of the Woodruff Report. I go in a long extendo rage on the NFL Combine. And if you, like me, are a Combine hater, or if you need your mind to be changed, check it out and listen to it and see what you think. So this was the Woodruff Report. I'm your host, David Woodruff. On this edition, we talked about the Giants, the San Francisco Giants, new acquisitions and how they will help the team and what they were intended and brought in to do. Then I briefly sounded off on the NFL Combine and pointed you to episode 14, The Underwear Olympics, if you wanted to hear more. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week again at the regular time, Friday afternoon, probably. And if not, look out for maybe the episode will at the latest be uploaded on Sunday. If there's no upload by Sunday, call the police. I've probably been murdered. Anyway, thank you for listening to this edition of the Woodruff Report, and check in next week. I'm your host, David Woodruff. Thanks for listening.